you stand with us? Unify us, purify us, so that we will change the world, so that we will change the world.
My trip started off in St. Louis for the 2006 edition of Urbana Missions Conference. Urbana is the biggest student missions conference in the world, and this year they hit a record high of 23,000 people. The theme was Worthy of the Calling, asking for what God's calling is, based on the book of Ephesians. In many ways, this small phrase has become my mission statement for the year: how to be worthy of His calling in my life during this time of great transition.
Unify us, purify us, so that we will change the world, so that we will change the world.
I did meet a guy named Shane Claiborne. He was one of the speakers at a seminar I went to. He had big glasses, thick dreadlocks, pointy beard, and a squawky Tennessee accent. The room was packed full of people, anxious to hear a leading voice in the monastic movement, advocating a life of simplicity similar to the early church, resisting our culture of consumerism. He started such a community in Philadelphia's inner city and has provided shelter for the homeless, tutored children, and transformed people's lives. He said some things that stirred something up in me. He talked at length about the huge imbalance between the wealthy and the poor. There's enough in this world to meet everyone's need, but not enough to satisfy our greed. And he was actually doing something about it by the way he lived and the way he acted. On his website, thesimpleWay.org, he stated this mission: to love God, to love people, and to follow Jesus. And we're giving that our best shot. I realized that I needed not simply to recognize that there is so much injustice in this world, but to act on behalf of the impoverished, the disadvantaged, and the weak. How could I do this with a background in architecture, a discipline that is so often elitist, excessive, and ignorant of social injustice?
Con mis manos y mi vida te alabo, bendito Señor. Con mis manos y mi vida te alabo, bendito Señor.
The air was filled with drywall dust, and the trailer was resonating drum beats from classic rock blaring out of the radio. I lifted my heavy steel knife from the mud bucket and plastered the inside corner of my newly hung drywall with thick white mud. A big glob fell back down on the floor, and I hung my head in despair. It was day 2 of our Waveland missions trip with Enoch and Pastor Dave, and I was becoming increasingly frustrated. There were just too many questions on my mind. Why are we even bothering to restore a trailer that was so claustrophobic and so poorly constructed? Why wasn't the owner coming to visit us? And why weren't we left instructions on what to do? Maybe we're doing all wrong. This whole project seemed very pointless to me, and I felt absolutely useless. Our team of 3 had flown 3,500 kilometers to a point on the Gulf Coast that was once a pristine cottage town, a place where the wealthy of New Orleans would spend their weekends to relax at their seaside mansions, along with the artists, the shrimpers, and the fishermen. The solitude was rarely interrupted during its 300-year history. Sure, there was the occasional hurricane, but none were as big as in the summer of 2005 when Hurricane Katrina hit. Bay St. Louis and Waveland were at the worst possible location, right on the westerly side of the eye wall, where the winds were the fiercest. During the storm, the 30-foot storm surge literally erased these two towns. We were here now, a year and a half later, witnessing a community that had just begun the process of healing. There were new houses that were being constructed, some on stilts. Physically, though, most of the area was still very heavily damaged. The coastline was still empty, its piers reduced to skeletons, its sandy beaches devoid of tourists. The only inhabitants on the beaches were crawfish several feet into the ground and evidenced only by curious dots in the sand.
Y mi vida te las entrego, bendito Señor. Toma mis manos y mi vida te las entrego, bendito Señor.
Dick and Maggie were a retired couple from Wisconsin who were also here with Lanny at church to drywall. They actually were the ones who had given the church the kits needed to do the drywall work. They were both retired teachers who had a heart for the suffering, and they extended a spirit of generosity to everyone they met. Dick came by our site the next day in his tattered Oshkosh overalls and taught us basic drywall techniques. Filling the gaps in the joints required several coats of mud. One firm sweep of the drywall knife was all that was needed. By letting it dry and then slowly building up the mud, layer by layer, over the course of several days, a smooth surface could be created. So on that day, our aimless jabs turned into purposeful strokes. We became eager apprentices to an experienced master who was willing to teach us everything he knew. And the couple continued to bless us that week. They set us up with an appointment to see a local historian, Charles Gray, who gave us one of the most spirited history lessons I have ever heard. He also introduced to us Deborah, who was a jewelry designer who designed for movie stars. In fact, that afternoon, we passed by her Creole-styled cottage and helped her with assembling the bed, as well as putting down plywood boards in the attic.
You guys ready for one more song? All right.
In the Bible, Jesus talks about the kingdom of heaven and what it's like. And for me, I learned a lot about what heaven is like when I went to Urbana and when I went to Mississippi. The kingdom of heaven is kind of like drywalling. It takes a lot of patience, and one might not see the results at first. In fact, there might be a lot of heartache and pain. But layer by layer, the cracks, the imperfections, and the holes get filled up. And the end result, after a whole week's worth of work, is a beautiful, seamless creation.